Welcome everyone. I'm Antoinette Schoar. I'm a professor in finance at Sloan. I've been at Sloan longer than I care to tell you, but I'm really excited about this panel because we termed this panel Advancement of Women in Finance, but during the conversations we had before the panel, this is obviously a broad topic and we're going to touch on a lot of different areas within industry and beyond finance. And what makes this panel so extraordinary is that we have 4 amazing female leaders in finance who come from very different aspects of the financial industry and therefore will give us a diverse view on the challenges and also the advancements that have already happened. So let me briefly introduce, kind of these 4 women. I'll go, kind of in order by name, but Beatrice Ballini, she is the managing director of Russell Reynolds Associates. She has been a member of the retail sector as Russell Reynolds. She's done a lot of work in that industry and has recently been elected to the board of Coty, a Fortune 500 company here in the US. Then we have Mariafrancesca Carli, who is managing director of BDT and Company. Mariafrancesca has more than 25 years in investment banking in Europe, the United States, at different firms like Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan. She has had a lot of experience in executing merger and acquisition transaction, capital raising with clients, right? A different aspect of the financial industry. On my very left is Thalia Chryssikou, who is a partner at Goldman Sachs. She's co-head of global sales, strats, and structuring across FICC and equities. She has served in many positions within Goldman. I don't want to go through all of them, but she was previously also the head of European interest rate and product sales at Goldman and managed the European macro sales and strats there. And then finally, but absolutely not least, is Mary Stephen Naphtal. Mary, you can say, is a veritable entrepreneur in finance. She is the co-founder and CEO of PE Investments. She previously also worked at McKinsey and Morgan Stanley, but then decided, kind of to, build her own organization. And so you'll see we have a very diverse group of women in finance who will talk to us about the challenges and the opportunities. And so I want to get started by asking all of you, as a way of introduction, in a way to share with us maybe a situation or a couple of situations where, as a woman in finance, you felt you had to make difficult decisions, challenging decisions, and how you managed them in your careers. And I'll start with Mary, and kind of we go from here.
Thank you. So I have just 2 short anecdotes. The first big turning point in my career, I was working for a financial software company. I realized that the men who were doing the same job I was doing were making 2.5 times what I was making. I got very upset. I went to speak to management, and they said, well, you should get an MBA. I said, so I could pay back that MBA, like right away. This is a good idea. So, that got me to go to Sloan, which actually opened a whole realm of opportunities, working for, big companies that you mentioned. The second turning point came when I was at McKinsey, and I, at that point in time, had 1 child and was pregnant with my second child. I was working out of the Chicago office, had just spent a year in Oslo, which was awesome, beautiful.
During the winter?
What?
During the winter.
Actually, during the winter. Yeah, I started in October, I went, yeah. And when I came back, there was a message on my answering machine, because this was a long time ago, saying, we're so happy you're back, you're going to Tokyo. And I said, wow, this is really hard. I understand. I had never, this whole idea of balance really never got me, but I literally had this kid who didn't speak English. I was pregnant. I thought, wow, this is wild. There's got to be a better way. And I was very fortunate at that point because my husband was kind of getting fed up with the corporate life as well. And so we decided to try and build something that would allow us to have our careers, which we cared a lot about. He cared a lot about making a lot of money. I wanted to actually see my children, and we worked that balance out. We said create a company that really reflected what we wanted, that cared about our families, that allowed people to grow, and really that's what I've been doing for the last 25 years. So in some ways, I know, I don't think I should be here. I'm not, breaking through the glass ceilings, but I do think that at some point you just kind of have to say, I want to have the life that I want to have, and make it happen. So,
I mean, you are underestimating how much you're breaking through the glass ceiling by actually setting the example of building something.
By going around the ceiling.
Yeah, even better. Sometimes you don't break them, you ignore them. Amazing. Go ahead.
A few words of context, otherwise we lose track of the example. But first of all, the example is back in 2013, and it has to do with my company and myself. And my company is a $600 million company headquartered in New York, which has a tradition of, being led by white males. And so in 2013, there was an opportunity to finally get a woman in the ExCo, or the management committee of the company. And this 9-member committee was basically reserved to men. And the opportunity came because we had a new CEO, and the CEO is a very enlightened and modern leader. And he called me up and he said, look, you have the choice between two things. Either you can join our nominating committee, which was a nice, comfortable position to be in, where you chat with other partners in the company and you make sure that things happen in the right way, or you can take a chance and get into our executive committee. But I tell you, you have 170 partners who have to elect you, so it's your game. And you will be the first woman after a long time sitting in this committee. So I said, look, I never want to sit comfortable, so I'll take a chance. And I'll go and try to run for ExCo. So chapter number 1, a year after, finishes very positively because I do join ExCo. And I sit in my first ExCo meeting with 8 males sitting in front of me, and here I know that something has to change. And that if I've been elected by 170 partners, half of which of whom are women, there is a sense to it. So not at the first meeting, but at the second meeting, I say, there is something wrong with this room. I'm alone. And I would love to have 2 more female partners sitting with me and, express their ideas. And everybody was looking at me and like, but we have you. I said, yeah, but it's not enough. So long story short, today there are 4 women sitting in the ExCo of my company. They bring a lot of diversity. The company has lots of leaders who are women. And I think in my little, choice of 2013, I made a contribution for this to happen. Thank you.
Amazing.
Yeah, go ahead. That's great. So thank you for having me here. I'm very grateful for being here and tell my little story. So I've been in finance for almost 30 years. And that was what I wanted to do since I was really young. So that's my positive. But for 30 years to be a resilient or a survivor of the sector, it took a little bit of an effort. And I cannot say that has always been straight. There are up and down in a career, I think, and also there is a lot of courage that you have to take when there is the down. And so I have a couple of suggestions that I would give to the audience. The first one, which I think is maybe more for women than men, is the ability to say no. Because often we love our job, we are really super committed, we stretch, And at the end of the day, sometimes that's not the right thing to do. And so if you are asked to change job, and you know that that is not what you feel, so follow your instinct. I think women are something that is very different. That is, we know what is right. And sometimes we get convinced to do a different thing, and we shouldn't. And so being able to say no and say to people, no, I'm going to do what I want, that avoid mistakes. So in my career, I knew what I liked. At the time I say I accept another job was not the right job for me. And so I think having the courage to say no is really, really important. The second one I think is really important as well is to be able to take the courage to change at the right time. And so again, I think we as a women, when we like something and we are good at it, we just do it. We don't look at what are the alternatives, what else is out there. And so when you, at a certain point, wake up and say, well, maybe I should change, or maybe the classmate of mine, which were in the Cube, as M&A advisors left 10 years ago, and I'm still here, well, that's good and bad, right? And so I think it's important to decide, look around, and be proactive. When you might think that there is a moment of an impasse, or you might not like the company anymore, be much more proactive, and build a system, as somebody else has said, both peers, but as Judy said, also mentors and sponsors especially, that can help you within your company, but especially outside. And so the commitment and the strength that we have has to be not 100% focused on something. We should remain cautious and using our network to think about something else over the years, because the career is long, and we can really get ahead if we help ourselves more than what we usually do.
Great. Thank you very much.
Again, thank you very much for having me as well at the panel. So a few thoughts about my journey post MIT. So I joined Goldman Sachs soon after graduating from MIT. So I'm still in my first job after 21 years. And the reason why I joined the firm was I was attracted on the goal-oriented and team-oriented culture. And so I found it a very nice continuum from my MIT experience. And within that, I think in the beginning of the career was quite an extraordinary place to be, because finance back then, more than 20 years ago, was in a very different state compared to what it is now. Very innovative, entrepreneurial, new businesses were created all the time. So in the beginning, the career felt that it was progressing very, very fast. And you were always involved in fascinating products and projects, and the team was exceptional. So the first years of the careers were actually ideal. But then you realize that, I think one of the lessons learned for me early on is you have to follow what you like and what you're passionate about, and not be stuck into one position. So I've kind of taken that principle, if you like, throughout my professional life, and I changed a lot of jobs, if you like, within the same organization. And really the driver was, what do I like to do, and where do I think I can add value the most? So that's kind of the good things. But then as you've been in the same place for a long time, you kind of realize that there's going to be different speed in one's career progression. Some people are going to go up like this. Some people are going to go flat and then up. Some people are going to have a steady career up. And so having that grit and that confidence that you know who you are and you know what you bring to the table, and you're comfortable enough to see other people, get promoted faster than you. Other people kind of get paid more than you. I think it's like knowing who you are, especially in a bigger organization, is key. And then after, so that was kind of a big moment for me when I realized that I need to be kind of comfortable with myself and what I bring to the table versus the peers. And again, the way I approached it is really, what is the mark you want to leave behind? You want to be remembered as someone who is innovative, who is a great leader, who is detail-oriented, whatever it is, but kind of define who you are, what is the mark you want to leave, and have that as a principle going ahead. And again, it's like have that ability to navigate your career and be proactive about it, coupled with having the tenacity, the grit, and really get involved in the areas that you feel passionate about. I think that combination, when I look back in the 20 years, I think that's what keeps me going still.
I think these are amazing examples of, kind of how you have managed to balance in your life all these different competing aspects of what life brings, right? And I think it highlights that women maybe are, on the one hand, as Mariafrancesca said, we do somehow get maybe sucked into our things and we are very good contributors and then forget about ourselves, right? Which sometimes means forget about our careers. But at the same time, right, maybe we are more conscientious about that there are all these other competing, interesting things going on in life. And I wanted to ask you, as a follow-up, what is the kind of balance that you are hoping for your life, or that that you strived for, and how did you achieve it? I know, kind of before the conference, Mary and I, for example, you talked about your experience, kind of as the transition to motherhood and how it forced you to make different choices. Do you want to talk a bit about that?
Okay, let's see. So I don't think that I was cut out to be a mother. I never planned on that. It sort of happened. So I never babysat. I didn't know anything about it. I was literally writing a progress review when I went into labor. I was writing a progress review as soon as the baby was born. I had documents coming back and forth. I looked at her and went, oh my God. And I had a nanny, I did all of that, and it really, I think, as I mentioned earlier, it was just the point at which when I realized she couldn't speak English, she could speak Spanish and Norwegian, but not English, that, maybe this wasn't so good, and maybe I needed to actually be in the same city. And something, kicked in, and I battled this with I don't know if this is still true, but certainly my generation, there were women who stayed home and there were women who worked. And you really couldn't be both. And so I was kind of weird, because I was working out of my barn, for several years as we were building the business. And in investment management, you need a track record. So you can't just go out to a big pension fund and say, hey, I've got this great strategy. It's just not going to happen. And that's where the big money is. Even a lot of foundations you can't go to. Who you can go to were fund-to-funds, which were big at that point. But those are little bits of money, and they don't really care. And so the idea that you were like, I don't know, in your garage in Silicon Valley or in your barn in Weston, Mass, it didn't matter to them. So that's what we did. I was able to kind of leave to pick somebody up after school, or maybe have my husband go pick them up, and I could come back. While they were doing their homework, I did my homework, and you emphasize that. But so it made that happen in a way that was not conventional. I had no female friends because they all said, you don't have time to do what we do, or you're not in this thing. So in a way, that was a hard decision. But once they did go to college, bam, we were ready. And the business has really taken off and grown. And I think people who come to visit now, can't get that you were in a barn in Weston. Weston, Mass. Because we have these 2 floors, in this office building in Boston that look at the harbor and all that. It's really lovely. And I still had this thing where people would say, well, it's great that you're doing all the work. I built all the systems for the business. I built the models. I built the operating systems. I manage all the people. It's really, and I really care about all the people in the organization. But for a while, people were like, oh no, you shouldn't see the investors. Really? What? And so I think when you get to the point where, actually, the reason they invest is they know you're going to be safe because of all those things you can explain. That was a big turning point. And I think it was also, and I will say, for those people worried, I think this idea of balance is dumb. I think, really, I think everybody has a life. And you have parts of your life. I mean, you know, nobody wants to only be working all day, because in the end, you know, the company will go on or not without you, you know? But you do want to have other things in your life, be it, you know, a cause that you care about or people that you care about or whatever. And that's true not just of women, but of men. It's true of everybody. And so I'm really rambling. I feel very strongly. I have men who have children, and I say, you're gone. I'll see you 3 months from now. Just like I say to the women. If you want to make a change, you need to make that change for everybody. You need to make it clear that I care, everyone here should care about their family, not just the women. This is not a women's issue, you know?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
That's right.
It's a fantastic way of looking at reality, and I think that I don't have children, but I have an extended family to take care of, very extended. And finding balance is not about working less. You know, finding balance is about putting the right time where you think priorities are. And it is difficult when you're 30. It's a little bit easier when you're 40. It becomes even easier when you're 50. It becomes absolutely natural when you're 60, because that's part of the life cycle. I mean, and you have to accept it. And I totally agree with you when I hear young people saying, but I want work-life balance. And I'm like, what are you talking about? You know, you want to work and you want to succeed and you have your interests and you have your priorities, fine. Mix it and make it work. But don't tell me that you want work-life balance. Sorry. I'm a European, a little bit provocative sometimes. Thanks a lot to have me with you.
So I think it's back to choices, and so in my life and career, so my one time I made a choice of that was not driven by my career, but was driven by saying I want something else. So I decided to move to New York because my husband was here, and I think that sometimes you have to, you know, make something that works for you, and not just for the company or for you know, whoever you're working for. And then you have to look at the long term. So I do agree with everything was said, that as you move towards you know, your career, but time goes fast, and there are moments that don't come back. And so if at times you say, well, I'll do it next time, it's not true. You will not do it next time. There will be no next time. And so in retrospect, I think that there are certain choices that have to be made, and it's not just family, it can be friends, there are, you know, it's passion, it's sports, it's other things, and having a rounded personality or following your passion. At the end of the day, everyone is good at the things that they love, and so doing that is really what people should do at any stage of their career, but just things go fast. And if you don't seize the moment, then it's gone.
I would say manage calendars, big time. I think manage calendars and manage expectations. Like you know, a few examples. When my kids were born, I basically, and then when they started going to kindergarten school, I said to my boss at the time, hey, I need to be taking them to school in the morning, because if I don't, I'm going to have zero connectivity with school whatsoever because of the time. And then it was okay. And then I was coming to work 1 hour and a half later than everybody else, and it was okay. And you could do it. Or blocking, you know, blocking time in the calendars, because you have to go to your kids' soccer game. You have to go to a parents' evening. But I think the most important thing in my life throughout is you have to be vocal about it, right? This is not, you know, the time to be secretive. Oh, I need to, you know, sneak out of the office because I need to do this outside of work and I don't want other people to know. And this is a culture that has been changing quite consistently over the last few years. So now it's about managing your professional career with your personal choices, whatever these may be, whether that's family or what you want to do in life, passions, etc. But having this ability to to communicate that, share, manage people's expectations when you're in the workplace, and manage your calendar really. It is what brings some balance. There was never going to be perfect. I mean, work-life balance, there's never a perfect balance and a perfect equilibrium. But sometimes in your career, you're going to be leaning more on one versus the other. But how you manage the process is important. And again, you have to lead with example. People around you, they need to see that you have a life outside of the workplace. And then that brings a leveraging effect that makes everyone be able to manage better. So again, that goes to whether you call it lead by example or however you want to call it, but almost like give back and try to see the things that work for you, try to kind of make it public, so make it work for others as well.
And I chip in on what Thalia is saying because it's very important, this idea of leading by example. And I'm fortunate enough to see a lot of women in leadership positions throughout the year. And when I meet one of them, I usually ask the question, what do you do to make sure that diversity is part of your agenda and it's a key priority? And the most univocal answer is, I lead by example. So exactly as you were saying, Julie, this is about, making sure that people see you, that people know what you're doing, that female and any type of diversity expression in the company sees you as an example. And make sure that they can talk to you, they have access to you, that you have time for them. Because that's the only way to move things around.
I think that's a very important point, but it also highlights, you said, time for you, right? It imposes even more on the female leaders, right, than on maybe the male leaders, because there are so many demands on them. So maybe if we change the lens, where have you seen in your firms, however, how the firms can help you, or initiatives that actually help women leaders, rather than, I totally take it, right? We are all out there and we should kind of obviously lead by example, but it should not all be, right, on the few women leaders who have already made it to the top, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I can start. It really starts from the top, really. You really see significant change when you see your CEO leaving it, and it's not just, talk. And it's really kind of a push and pull. It comes from the grassroots up, but also it's the tone and the culture that is set from the top that is evolving around accountability and commitment. Number one, what do you do about it? Metricing, having these kind of ambitious targets out there and making sure the whole organization is moving towards achieving that, and be public about your goals. The moment, we all work in big firms, the moment you say something publicly out, then this is the goal, then you have to reverse engineer, you better get there, right? So a lot of the things is declaring these ambitious goals and then get the whole organization behind it. And it's amazing when you start to metric it. We all come from technical kind of backgrounds. When you are able to metric initiatives and have real goals and timeline and the important milestones to give, it's amazing what the collective can achieve. But again, I think it does come from the top, and then it comes from the top, it comes from the bottom, and then you converge in the middle where I see in my experience the issues that we have with losing female talent tends to be not in the beginning of one's career, but on that kind of critical middle point where you will need the sponsorship, you will need the mentorship, and you need the constant investment to help them go through it. And that's why you need both sides of the equation to balance in.
Other
specific examples? Maybe in my case, my last job where I am at now is a company which is called BDT, and we invest and advise family-owned companies. And the relevancy to this topic today is that actually for us it's not only the fact that we have an ecosystem whereby We target recruiting in a certain way. We target diversity throughout the various levels of the organization. But we are in a way even in a better position because of the type of job we do. So advising families and investing with families allow us very often to have to interact with the matriarch. So a family, by definition, has layers of generations where there are women. And so it happens that we bought 2 companies where the founders, we are partners, we have a stake in Tory Burch. We also have helped an entrepreneur in the tequila business, Casa Dragones, and she has chosen to partner with us. We have a lot of clients where women ask actually to have on the BDT side maybe a female senior person that can be on the client team, or can maybe mentor the younger person in the family that just became a mother, wants to still work at the family, how you balance the 2 things. So these are just examples whereby in an organization you can help women to advance because of the culture, because of the top, but because of the business too. And so getting help from your clients, I find it very, very important, because it's an ecosystem that embraces the diversity and help everyone to achieve business and social impact and many other elements.
Yeah, one interesting, just to follow up on a point, one of the interesting things, I think for me, the kind of the diversity is about business really as well. It's not just because it's good to have it, it's also what makes good business sense as well. And one of the things that if you think is, and one of the things that we kind of launched last year was an initiative to invest for profit to women-led companies, or into to companies where either you have a founder who's a woman, or you have a woman that it is in the kind of C-suite. And that is a combination of be able to promote not only kind of the women for the business, but also create that ecosystem of support to be able to get more women into the kind of the right investment cycle as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a quick example. You asked for some specific examples about cultural things or how they're changing. And so one of the things I noticed, even if you have people who've been with your company forever, eventually you're going to hire people from other places who come in, they bring their own cultures. We have values we talk about, we do trainings about, we say the way you get promoted is by exhibiting these values. But I noticed that I was kind of the person, to your point, that was going around and kind of talking to everybody and understanding what they were doing toward these values. And the other members of my management committee really were kind of clueless. And I said, okay, this is kind of nuts, and we're going to devote our management committee meetings for 2 months to having everybody come in for 5 minutes and present to us what they're doing on these values. Of course, every 5 minutes was 15 minutes. It took forever. But it was so enlightening to have them actually here to engage. And I think they just hadn't maybe thought to go out and ask people, what are you doing? And I do that all the time. And I don't know if that's a female thing or just who I am, but to have the whole management committee sit there and actually be able to listen to people. And you realize that some people's idea for their career paths were different than what we thought. We had a guy, who's a programmer, who's, developing kind of, big data sort of systems, who really wanted to go do research and wants to go get a different degree. And we're like, what? This had never happened before. Because usually the programmers just wanted, no. And we're like, wow, that would be great. You want to get a quantitative finance degree? Awesome. We'll have you do that. And we had another person we thought was on track to be a trader who really wanted to do HR. We're like, really? That's okay, So by having them there and actually having all of us together, you could break through those kind of functional lines that kind of invisibly got set up and actually really think about career paths for people in a way that I think is inspiring for them and is actually going to be good for our business in the long run. So.
Did you?
I'm fine.
So you all also are highlighting the importance of how to change culture, or the culture that is, kind of stimulating differences, or evolution, if you want, in your firms. I know some of you have been very actually engaged in changing culture in your firms. Maybe you want to share some examples?
Changing the culture. Not an easy one, because you have to basically start with the values and then go to behaviors, and that's a daily effort. But in essence, I believe that, at least we're doing it at my company, and I'm seeing it done in other companies as well, it has to do with training. And training is more powerful than we think sometimes, especially when you have to break down what we call unconscious biases, which we all have, but we're not conscious of having. And we have to start from the root. And the second thing is to have, which Mary was mentioning, meetings where you tell the truth, where the white elephant is talked about, where difficult conversations can happen. That's a way to, not to change the culture, because changing the culture is something that everybody talks about. I prefer to say open the culture, which is, when you open a culture, then you're ready to change. And opening the culture is where it all starts from. So we can talk about later about the charter that some CEOs have signed, but it all starts from there.
Yeah, I think to me is a question of allowing and forcing women to do things that are in a certain way not as natural. So like going to technology. So we are in finance, but technology is pervasive everywhere. And if you think about disintermediation of jobs, like in finance, like the equity sales was a great business in the 90s, almost doesn't exist anymore. And perhaps women, because of the focus we have on our own business, we continue to do what we are doing. And to me, changing culture means to making sure that women, as much as anybody else, so the diversity, is always been in a continuous education and remains a really cutting edge. And so if from the top there is a stimulus or a push for everyone to do that, that allows people to maintain the cutting edge and everyone progresses at the same level.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point. I'm one of the people that believes that technology actually is creating a level playing field that is allowing women to excel. If I look back when I started on the trading floor 20 years ago, very different place to today. There was a very shouting, communicating by voice, either internally or with the clients, more of kind of a macho type of approach to the business, the way we were interacting internally, but also with our clients. And when I see that now to today, silent floor, communication that happens in a digital way, the way we offer content to clients or we sell products to clients tend to very much reside in the cloud. And I think that's kind of created a different working environment, which is a lot more inclusive compared to what it was before. So I do believe that technology is progressing the workplace in a very meaningful way, in a way that's a lot more inclusive compared to before. And to tell the truth, and now it's a lot more open. Capabilities are open. You don't have that close-knit relationships that unless you were kind of buddy-buddy with your peers or your boss, then you have preferential treatment because information is available for all. It's available internally, it's available externally with the client. So now it is, I do think it's easier to kind of operate because you have the information there and it's up for you to kind of harness it and kind of use it to progress, in what you're trying to do.
Yeah, and I would say that culture is evolving. It's always changing. It's like the planet. It's always evolving and changing. And you may think you have a certain culture and people will fall into routines. People fall into hierarchies. You might not want a hierarchical organization, but customers will come in and ask you, what's your title? And people will make up titles, even if they don't have them. I don't know, it happens all the time. So you have to, it really is a conscious thing at all times. And I think one of the things I heard this morning during the CEO part was really struck me. A lot of it is the physical environment. I think you can set the scene if you want to make a change by changing the environment. You know, get rid of the offices and open it up, or make workspaces that are mobile, or, you know, put a stand-up desk somewhere and let people go wander off and use them. And then they interact with other people. So sometimes if you want to break down barriers and open things up for change, you need to physically open things up to make that happen.
And it's interesting, you know, you are all highlighting, on the one hand, you know, the power of technology, the power of maybe better metrics, right, better data, allowing for a more meritocratic workplace, and maybe even more measurement of much more complex goals and achievements. But then, at the same time, we see that women are now, you know, if you look at the statistics, shying away from exactly those industries where I would have also, as a, you know, academic who, you know, looks at things with data, I would have thought this should be where women want to go, right? Where you kind of don't have to shout your way to the top, but where everything is nicely measured and you can show, right, that you're doing better than other people. So it is actually, I mean, to me, it's very concerning that the young women are not going into STEM, right? We talked about this. So maybe I want to end, you know, even though that is concerning, on a more uplifting note. I mean, in the sense of what are the type of things you feel women should embrace, and also what can we do to help, you know, kind of the younger generation. But it is a two-way stream, right? Because if women don't even go into STEM, it becomes very tough to help them in finance, right? I mean, somebody who doesn't know any math, what can I do for them, right?
This is the problem I posed to. I'm thinking.
I mean, it's like, look, I think it's, of course, it's not an easy problem to solve. And again, it's going to take collective effort to change that. But even small things like, you know, I was involved in a program where it's basically we go to high schools, and it is a program for women to code, for example. So it's not necessarily women that would go and study it per se, but kind of open the field to and make it more widely accessible. I think that's kind of a way to do it. A lot has to do as well from the family, in all honesty. I think is the more parents are talking about and opening up this field to the kids is important. I think dads played a pretty important role in that, and the whole kind of support. But again, I think when I look at it though, I think there isn't enough talent, female talent out there to draw from. And of course, it would be ideal that the pool to be even greater than it is today. But if I look at, you know, at the room, there is significant talent out there that is relevant for practical and mathematical and applied fields and jobs. So the question is, one is to try to make the pool larger, but also, you know, draw from the pool and then support and harness throughout the career. And then you're going to start to have that critical mass that will enable you to create economies of scale and kind of give it back and create that leveraging effect.
But it is true, I mean, from a European perspective at least, that finance was the place to be when we started, when I started. It was, you know, either strategic consulting or it was finance, but those were the golden careers, let's put it this way. And things have changed, and it's not only women, but it's also men are looking at the world in a different way today, and they're not necessarily, you know, seeking to go to investment banking or to strategic consulting. So I think it's a cycle. I think it's actually a healthy cycle, to be honest. yes, there are less talents. The pool is smaller, but it's also a good thing because companies are fighting for these talents, and the best companies will attract the talents, and the other ones will not, which is part of life. So, you know.
And I think that's the point you made. I mean, when we were talking about this, about the cycles, I should let you make your point.
No, go ahead.
No, but we were talking about the cycles and the reality of, we're kind of in a period where reality doesn't have much credence. You know, facts and figures are something that people kind of overlook. You see that clearly in the political world, but you also see it in business world, where so many assets go into places, kind of pools that, you know, private equity pools where things aren't marked. And I talk to investors and they say, well, we think that's diversifying because, you know, it's diversifying from the equity market. And I say, well, how is that? You know, how is private equity diversified from equity? And they're like, well, it doesn't get marked, so we don't have to put it on our books. Okay, that doesn't seem very realistic to me. At some point, the reality, if a company gets too big, you know, like Uber recently, they're going to have to, they can't just sell themselves to another company because they're so big. They're going to have to try and go public if they're going to cash out. And then the reality of what's going on happens. Eventually, the facts and figures matter. And I think, you know, to your point, that ability to actually look at the facts and figures and not just the story is really important. And I think that's, you know, that's why I went to Sloan in the first place. I felt like I needed credibility as a quantitative person if I was going to succeed in finance, that I couldn't, you know, just have a liberal arts degree. I needed to show that, you know, hey, you know, I can do math too. And you go to MIT, people don't question that. But that sort of reliance on the truth and facts and figures will come about, and we will see that, you know, that cycle will break. And I think that, you know, there will be, you know, an opening up of people, you know, having opportunities there. It's not just how loud you can talk, it's also what you know.
Great, that's a wonderful way to end, even though I hate to break up this wonderful panel. But I thank you all for, you know, kind of this wonderful conversation. Thank you.
I wanted to, can we get the picture that I took? Where's Patsy? Yeah, here we go. Okay, I don't know if you can read that, but I was walking through, not far away from 42nd Street in New York. Okay, 2 days ago, and here is the man, obviously not somebody we would like to see in the street, but he was in the street, and on the little thing that you see on the left is written, showing partiality is never good. I took a picture and I said, this is the only slide I would like to show today because this is the voice of the street. As little as it can be, as powerful as it can be.
Say it loud again.
Showing partiality is never good.
The other one, ignore it. That's not the important one. But let me say one thing too. In a way, what Beatrice is saying. There are some studies out there that actually literally say that female labor force participation in the US over the last 30 years contributed to half of GDP growth in the US. Just getting talented women into the labor force, right, has been a huge boon for actually the US, you know, kind of job market and GDP, which the Europeans are catching up on, the Asians, you know, especially Japanese and so on, you know, still far behind. So I think, you know, kind of this idea that in the end, really, you know, kind of talent will be rewarded and women will be rewarded. And I'm so grateful for all of you to highlight this to our audience.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.